Hello and welcome back to Colouring in Lost in Time by RJ Hampson, and today I'm going to use Shuttleart Gel Crayons, and I'm also going to use some Pentel oil pastels. I have a set of 36 here, and I want this page to be a bit of a mixed media page, so I'm not sure how much I will use of each thing and whether I will introduce anything else into the mix, but that's what I'm going to start with. I have 36 colours in the Pentel, and the gel crayons here is a set of 48, plus I do have some other gel highlighters which are pastel colours and so on. So between all of those I'll get started, and then I might bring some other things into it, but we'll get started with these and see how we go. So hopefully the lighting is okay. Today is very windy and blustery and wintry where I am today. It's very grey, and you may hear some noise from, I have a fireplace here in the studio. It's an open fireplace that isn't actually working, but you hear a lot of noise coming from the chimney. So we'll see how we go. So if you hear too much background noise or banging or so on, it could be that. Also, I've got Hamish in here. He's having a snooze, and sometimes he starts to grumble and make noises when he's having a sleep as well. So we'll see how that goes. So if you're not familiar with gel crayons, they're a little bit like a lipstick format where you turn up the crayon, and you can see obviously you don't have a fine point, which makes it very difficult to get into fine small areas, fine blending. But I'll show you what I've been playing with, trying to get around some of these shortfalls, and if you've got them and you haven't thought of it, then it might help you out. So to start with, I use just a cotton bud or a Q-tip, and you can blend with those. You can blend with your finger. And I haven't tried it yet, but I'm guessing that you may be able to work with things like this. I've got this fan brush that has a silicone tip on the end of it, and the silicone tip sometimes can be handy for moving and blending things. So it does work a little bit. So you can get all sorts of different tools now with the silicone. And then what I've found is that when I'm really stuck, because these are water soluble, I have been using a paintbrush or a water brush just to help dilute and spread the colour into areas that I want a little bit more detail, or you know, it's too tight to get in there with the big crayon. So I hope you are all well. I hope you're enjoying the series here, whether you're colouring along with me or not. These videos can be transferred to whatever book you've got. So you don't need to be colouring this same book as me, but hopefully you get some ideas and tips and tricks and so on from watching me using these different mediums that you can transfer it to a different book that you're colouring in. So what I've decided there is it's too hard to go around those spots, so I've decided to go over them, and then I can use maybe an acrylic paint pen or a gel pen or something in a lighter colour to come over the top of that later if I want to. Now I like to do this area under his chin here lighter, So we'll stick with that. Now also what I've been doing is sometimes lifting the colour from the tip of the crayon, which gives me a lot more diluted, subdued colour. It's very vibrant when you work directly onto the paper. And so that's one way that I've been getting around the issue of working into details and small areas. And of course, being a water-soluble product, you can work with it like you would with any other water-based medium or water-soluble medium that you have, where you can blend your colours and overlay colours in different ways, just like, you know, watercolour pencils or watercolours themselves, water-based markers if you're picking them up from a palette and using them. You know, think about using them in terms of any of those other things that you might have. So I've actually been quite enjoying using them. They're a little bit different for me. I really didn't think that I was going to like these gel crayons, which is why I held off buying them for so long. I only just recently bought them in the Prime sales on Amazon. And these ones are Shuttleart. But I had purchased some Bible, they were marketed as Bible highlighters, and I had enjoyed working with the stencils with those and thought that I'd like to try a bigger range of colours out and in different ways. And so I've been experimenting with them on backgrounds mostly, but then just recently I thought, well, why not try using them like any other water-based medium, and it's working. So whether I've got enough colours to get me through a whole page remains to be seen, but they certainly give you a very nice base to start working from, and they're very vibrant. So the Bible highlighters came in a range of colours, but they were quite subdued because they're actually meant for highlighting text, so therefore they're quite transparent and you can see through, which makes them very handy in this sort of application because you can see all the line work. It doesn't obliterate all of the line work, and they're really pretty colours and very subdued colours, you know, more muted. So it just got me to thinking that I would like to try using the gel crayons after all. And I managed to pick them up. They were reduced already on Amazon, and then I had a coupon to use. And so it just about made them free. I think I ended up paying about $3 or $4 for them. And I thought that's good enough for me to give them a go. And also my granddaughter will like them if I don't. So you can see there that that didn't quite dilute fully and blend out fully, so you need to play around with them a little bit and work out, you know, just at what point is too much colour. You know, I could have perhaps been pressing too hard there with that, or do I, you know, should I be applying it in a different way? I'm still learning. You know, I've done a few pages now, but I've still got a lot to learn. But I also feel that as a base, you can leave some of these blotchy areas and then use coloured pencils or markers or something else to blend it in and come over the top of it if you need to, or indeed just leave it if it suits the texture of the subject that you're colouring. Then, you know, just run with it. Just use it as a aid to describe what it is that you're colouring. So they're quite fast. They speed things up a lot when you use them as crayons. Coming back with the water brush, obviously, and diluting them takes a little bit of time, but it's not the you know, the hardest, slowest process that you could be doing. And you can apply these with different brushes and different tools, but I don't think I'll be doing that here because the drawing is quite detailed and the elements are all quite small. I don't think I'll be doing that using any of those big brushes or tools to apply the colour here. If I had a big area of sweeping background, like, you know, maybe in the sky, but this particular one is all quite detailed, so I don't think I will be using it here. I thought that it might be useful for you to see a demonstration of using them in a more detailed, tighter space so that you can get an idea of different applications for gel crayons if you haven't thought about colouring with them like this yourself. I know some people have them and sometimes they, you know, will only use them for backgrounds. They feel like they're too cumbersome or bulky to use in other ways. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of a demonstration of the different sorts of pictures that I have been enjoying colouring with them. As I say, it doesn't matter if you make a few little bits of going over lines and stuff like that, because you know, we're going to possibly bring in some other types of mediums and pencils and so on. So you might be able to hear now that the rain is starting to pick up again. The rain is very welcome because we haven't really had a very wet winter so far here, and it was a very long dry summer, so we definitely need it. But I'm not so keen on the wind, and Hamish is a bit scared of wind. Sorry, I'm just grabbing everything here. So just a few reminders. This book is an Amazon Australia printed book, so my paper is able to withstand, you know, a reasonable amount of water. Amazon Australia printed books do have much sturdier paper than for example, the US printed books and the UK printed books can just turn to mush when you put water on them. But I'm fortunate in that the Australian Amazon books do cope quite well with a little bit of, you know, water. And of course I do flood it, but that does make it bend and cockle, and I have done it to the point where I've torn the paper. But if you're wanting to have a go, I would say start with a light touch first and then keep building up to see what your particular book can cope with. Or, you know, if you'd like to print it out onto watercolour paper or sturdier paper, you will have a different result. Just going to get some of those bigger areas done first. Establish a bit of the background and then think about what I'm going to do with the rest of the picture, because as per normal I haven't planned a colour palette. I just dived in with the greens, and I know that being that I'm using the gel crayons here, that they're going to be rather vibrant and strong colours. But I kind of like that for Mr Fogherty. And I think that would be a bit of grass there behind her. So I like this super vibrant colour. It suits R.J. Hampson's illustration style for me. I do like to make these particular books, you know, very vibrant, very colourful, and basically, you know, a bit of fun. So I'm just trying to use a range of greens so that I get, you know, different variation and describe the various areas so that the eye can pick those differences out. Now that's something to be careful of. Little bits of crayon do pick up and drop quite easily. So what I might do is, you know, try to keep this sort of with the watery type effect, and then maybe use some bolder markers around the border there, for example. Okay, so next I might just put a bit of colour into the water, and I like to with water try and do like a aqua or greenish blue for water. And especially for like a pond or a lake, there will be some reflections of the grass in the water too, reflections of the other colours. So I might just allow for adding some of those extra colours in by leaving some white spaces. And then if I don't need it later, I can come back and put some more of this colour. But I find decisions like that sometimes evolve for me as the page goes on, the colouring goes on, and so I haven't pre-thought those colours, but I like to get the bigger areas suggested, and then I can bring in all those other colours at a later stage. Now with the gel crayons, when you first apply them, they feel a little bit tacky or sticky. And then once they've had water on them and diluted with water, when that dries, that's no longer tacky, and it makes it a very good surface for putting the other colours on it or pencils on it. And what I would suggest, if you're just going to leave gel crayons, they need to sort of air dry. So I leave the book open for a few hours or overnight and come back to it, and it's air dried and it's not so tacky and sticky feeling then. And I'm getting a bit of a mess here because I've obviously got some loose bits on my crayons and on my caps. Now I haven't swatched these, so some of the colours are still new to me. I haven't used every single crayon in the set yet. So I tend to, you know, fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to these things and take a chance that the colour is going to somewhat resemble the barrel colour. And you can see it's quite different, but it gives me a reasonable idea of what the colour is going to be. And there's no colour names or numbers or anything to identify the crayons, so again, partly why there's no sort of structured colour along for this. But whatever you're colouring with, whatever you're using, you should be able to work out something similar if you'd like to create a similar look. So I do like to remind you that my goal isn't for you all to have structured colour alongs where you're going to have pages that are as identical to mine as you can get. That's not the goal for me. The goal for me is to colour in a way that makes me happy and hopefully inspires you and helps you to choose your colours, to think about techniques, to think about what medium you might use and so on. My goal is never for you to actually have a complete you know, representation that looks exactly like mine. Because, you know, a lot of you have got wonderful ideas yourselves, you just don't have the confidence to follow through. And I want to help you get that confidence, and I want you to, you know, create your own brilliant pages. I would hope that, you know, people buy colouring books because they want to colour, not that they want to have a, you know, a, what's the word I'm looking for? A faithful replica of somebody else's book. You know, it's your book. Make it yours. Make it unique. You know, use the ideas and the knowledge that other people are sharing with you, but make your book your own. Okay, so I'm going to need to let that dry or use a hairdryer. I think given that it's such a cold day today, I will put the hairdryer on it and I will come back to you. Okay, so I've got the Bible highlighters out. There's no real brand name on these, so I bought them from Temu. But you'll see that the colour is a lot more subtle, and I'm going to use that as a basis for the sky. So I thought that it might be like one of those lovely summery days where the sky is really you know, it almost looks quite pale because the sun is so bright. Complete opposite to what is going on in my world right now. Just going to do that for now. And then I'll get one of these cotton buds and see if I can just push that around a little bit and blend it in. So recently I've been having a lot of fun playing with a combination of these gel crayons, the oil pastels. I've also rediscovered my water-soluble oil pastels that I've had for a number of years, and I tucked away in a drawer because my first few attempts of using them weren't very successful. I didn't like the results that I got with them, so I just put them away and kind of forgot about them because yeah, I didn't find them very enjoyable to use. But once I had been playing with these gel highlighters, it sparked my curiosity to have another go with, you know, what I already had tucked away. And I've really been enjoying playing with different things and trying different combinations together to see, you know, will coloured pencils work with it? You know, will crayons work with it? And just really having a lot of fun. And having absolutely no idea what the end result is going to look like, you know, but doing it anyway, just having a go anyway. And I decided that what I was going to do, my approach was going to be that I actually didn't want to see how anyone else was using them. So I thought that what I would do is just follow my instinct for a little while. You know, that feeling that you get about just naturally or intuitively how you think something should work. And I thought that I'd like to follow that first. And if it didn't work, then I'd go looking for how other people are using them. But I didn't want to be influenced right from the get-go. I wanted to follow my intuition. And I wanted to trust my sort of gut instincts a little bit first, because quite often when you go through a bit of a colouring slump or a bit of a confidence crisis, and I have just sort of recently had a bit of a slump with not knowing what direction I wanted to take things and so on, you do tend to start doubting your doubting your decisions and your natural instincts and so on. And I'm not just talking about colouring here, but basically, you know, it's just something that we do. We lose a bit of confidence and we start to not listen to our own gut instincts or intuition anymore. And I thought that it was high time that I started allowing myself to experiment and play with different things and see what felt good to me. Take the intellectual sort of thinking about, is this the right way they should be used, or is this how they're designed to be used? Take that out of the equation for a little while and start, you know, just thinking about, well, how do I want to use this, and does it feel good when I use it this way? So it's not about the most efficient use of it, and it's not necessarily about getting the best results out of it for me, but is there an enjoyment factor to this? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? Because if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, there's really very little point forcing myself to do something. And, you know, I've said it many a time, but to me, a hobby is something that should be enjoyable. You shouldn't need to force yourself to sit down and do it. You know, it should be something that you look forward to doing. You know, almost excited to sit down and follow through on the ideas that you have. And I find sometimes that when you're not enjoying things, when you're not feeling confident and so on, those ideas really do dry up. And you sort of a bit ho-hum about it all. And that's kind of where I was a few weeks back. So getting these new supplies and allowing myself to really just play with them has been a very good thing for me personally. So I'm just going to try with these gel highlighters, which are essentially the same thing. They're just a different range of colour. Let's just go into those little areas, and I think I might need to put some coloured pencil or marker in there. Or even the Languo gel pens will work with these. The acrylic type of ink that they have works with those gel crayons very nicely as well. So there's a softer, paler blue, and of course we can put little bits of that into the water as well. Now, lake or pond water, of course, can be very still and like a mirror. But Russell has drawn in all these lines that suggest that there's ripples, there's movement, there will be reflections, won't be mirror-like when you've got movement in your water. So if it was still flat water, then it would be a mirror-like reflection that you would have in the water. But Russell's drawn this to suggest there's movement. You know, Mr. Darcy's just appeared out of the water, or in this case, Mr. Fogherty has just appeared out of the water and he's dripping. So, of course, all the water is going to be moving and the surface is going to be disturbed. So we don't need complete mirror-like reflections of the sisters there in the water, but we can put some colours in there in a vague shape to suggest that they're being reflected in there, maybe for something interesting. Or you can just use your colour for your water and you know, leave it like this if that's what you would prefer to do. So I'm thinking, normally they had sort of, I'm thinking about the shows that I've seen, they had quite subdued colours in the dresses, but I'm going to do some maybe pastel colours to start with. So I might do one with like a lilac or a purple. And you can see I'm not being too careful there, because just make sure I get a clean part here. I know that I can use coloured pencils or markers or something to fix anything up if I really don't like the way this dries. And we'll maybe put a little bit of deeper colour in spots just to suggest some shadows or depth of colour there. So now I'm thinking I'm getting into here, it's such small areas that I don't think I'm going to be able to use those oil pastels in here. I shall have to save those for another picture. Now the one in the middle, we might make her in a sort of peachy sort of colour. And these are very, very pastel. I'm probably going to have to use some pencil to put the details in and strengthen some of this because it's coming out much too pale for what I was hoping for. So maybe what I will do there is grab this orange and yeah, that's really not coming out as dark as I was hoping, so I might use pencil for finishing their dresses off. I'll just get a colour down to start with on that end one, so maybe we'll do that end one in pink. And I can put some metallic buttons and things like that. So I'd like to maybe match the ribbons on their hats to what they're wearing. Put that there to remind me. I want them to look like they've got sunbonnets on, but the ribbons can match their dresses. And then I think the hole in the background, I'd like it to sort of be very pale cream or grey or something like that. So I might use the Langro gel pens for that. Now his top hat I think would be quite dark. So let's just put a colour base of black on and then we can strengthen that up with other colours later. And I think his riding boots will make those black as well, or maybe dark brown. We'll just get a base down on there. And then his riding crop. Now his riding, well, his pants, I think they would have been his undergarments, wouldn't they? But we'll do them as some sort of riding pants, I think. We'll use that same colour on, should we do that on his jacket? Or will he have, I've forgotten his hands, maybe a darker brown. I'll do that colour to start with. I was thinking navy, but I think maybe brown. Would be more in keeping. And then I'm going to use that colour very lightly. Start putting some of that into the house. Because what that does to my thinking is that same colour flows through, ties him to the clothes to the house. And grand though the house be, that's not the centre of the story. The centre of the story obviously is Mr Fogherty and the sisters, and then the house. I'm going to have to put some details back in with gel pens and acrylic paint pen and what have you, because it is very hard to be accurate with such a big crayon. But that will do for starters, for a bit of colour on the house. So I just wanted to show you that, you know, gel crayons can be difficult to work with in these tight spaces, but it's not impossible. You can do it if you really want to. You'll find a way to work around that. And of course you might not want to, and that's fair. That's definitely a fair assumption. You may not want to be going to this trouble. And that is certainly a very valid opinion and choice to have. So I've got some really gloopy thick bits there that I'm just trying to dissolve and then pick that excess water back off. Okay, so again I'll leave it there and come back to you when it's dry. Okay, so that's dry with the hairdryer now, and you might be able to hear it's very crinkly. I thought I'd just show you that it is a little bit buckled. There's a tiny bit of bleed through, which is the area that I wet more and overworked a little bit with the crayon, but that's the bleed through on there. So I thought I'd show you that before I go any further. And now what I'd like to do is actually bring in the coloured pencils. So this is an example of what happens when a page evolves and I decide that, you know, my initial idea isn't going to work as well as what I had hoped. So I'm going to bring some coloured pencil into this now. So I've got Arrtx coloured pencils. I've also got a few Polychromos and a few Prismacolor in this pencil case. And that's what I'm going to use here. And I'm going to start doing a little bit more of the details now with the coloured pencils. So he's quite vibrant. So I don't really want to make him any more vibrant, but I'll bring details into him. But I want these, the sisters here to look a little bit more prominent than they currently are. So I'm actually going to use, let's have a think. I might use the Arrtx to start with. So I'm going to go with Rose Red. And I'm just going to put a little bit of detail back in here and strengthen some of this colour up, because it's not quite as vibrant as I was hoping. And I don't want to cover those crayons completely, but I just want to put some details in and strengthen some of those details up. Now I know, like, some people will think that, you know, they want to colour it period appropriate for the subject that's being displayed here, but in this instance I just want it to be quite colourful and fun, so I'm not really thinking about whether this is period appropriate colours for their clothing, but I think if you wanted to make it that way, it would be really fun to actually think about what sort of colours would they have been wearing and do it to suit. But I'm currently in the mode of wanting to use lots of bright colours, so that's what I'm going to go with. And then let's just use a little bit of pink here. This is Baker Miller pink. And I'm not sure about that at the bottom of a dresser. Yeah, we'll just go with pink. Now I'm not going to be too fussy with getting the details too precise, because they are in the background, so he's obviously going to be the most important, and then them. So that's what I need to keep in my mind too, that I don't want them to overtake Mr Fogherty as the, you know, prime interest. So this one is called Sand. And I won't forget the ribbons. I want them to match the outfit. And that will do for her for now. And now we want a lilac-y purple. So just bear with me a moment, I need to sharpen. So you can see I'm colouring quite quickly and roughly, because I don't think it needs to be laboured over. When it's a smaller area of detail like this, there's only so much that you can actually do with that, you know, before it just becomes hard to read. So that will do there for now, and we'll just do a little bit darker under there. And I'll do any sorts of shadows and things towards the end, but now it's just getting an idea of where the colours need to be. Now his shirt, I thought that what I might do is actually suggest some of his greenness, his body, coming through the white of the shirt. And I have put his hands in and a little bit of colour on there because I didn't want it to be stark white. And also I'm thinking a bit of a cool blue. So this one is cloud blue. For the more shadowy sort of areas. Now, of course, white things don't have to be all completely white. You can still suggest that they're white by adding some other colour in. Just as black things don't have to be solid black for you to suggest that they are black things. And then of course areas where the light would be hitting his shirt will be a brighter white. So I've got grass green here to do a little bit of a shadow on his hands. And maybe a little bit of that for the details up here. I do like the way that Russell does the expressions on these characters' faces. You know, this one's fainting and this one here is like, This one's shocked, but you know, the little one on the end there, she's not quite so shocked at all, is she? So this is where the pencil obviously will be much better for getting into these areas along the edge of the border here. Tidy those up. And I think I might like to make the border in maybe a marker, water-based marker maybe. We'll see. So I'm trying not to press too hard with the pencil. I want to leave a little bit of scope for layering extra on here once I've worked out what I want to use as my shadow colour, so that I've got scope to darken up and put some shadows and so on. So I don't want to flatten the paper and get rid of all of the tooth of the paper. You know, too soon, and then give myself no options. And I think as it sort of goes back, I like it to be less distinct and a little bit more faded as we go further back. And this is going to be a bit of a sandy sort of bank. So I might just use something like light umber to get started. And that same light umber, I'm going to darken some of his trousers. Not too much at this stage because, you know, I'm repeating myself, but just gradually building that colour up. I know that I want his jacket to be darker, so let's go for dark umber. And you can hear Hamish, he's dreaming. So we don't have to have everything solid colours either, so you can leave things a little bit patchy to start with if you want to, and just you know, do things lightly so we can give ourselves a bit of scope to darken things up later. Okay, and I don't want that to sort of look too flat, so let's put a little bit of lighter ochre or something like that in there. Goldenrod maybe, or no, yellow ochre. There we go. And then on the house in the background, I'm going to use yellowish grey. And start to add a bit of colour into here. Now I vary the way I work from time to time, so sometimes I like to focus on the foreground and then move backwards, and then other times I like to jump around and do a little bit everywhere and then build the colour up, you know, gradually, so I don't overdo things and keep a balance. And of course it's up to you to find your way. There's no right way. No, but this is something that helps me to try and keep things in the correct perspective without getting too overdone with one thing over another. There will need to be some shadows put in there, but you know, we'll get there eventually. So that's that sort of light coloured sandstone. That's what I was sort of hoping for, that. Okay, now I'll leave that out for now. So reassessing. So now with Mr Fogherty, he needs a little bit more work. I think what I might do with him is I might use a little bit of Prismacolor because I want to go a bit lighter. So this is a pale sage, and I want to lighten up a few areas if I can, and I think I'm going to have to bring in some white. So just tone down some of that very vibrant greenness that was there and get him looking a bit different to the grass. And I'll get my Prisma white out. So I'll start to think about some areas where I need to preserve some lighter areas. Okay, let's see if we can lighten up these little spots that he has. And then what I might do around those little spots, so he's not looking quite so green, I might use, what's this one, fern green. So we're taking a bit of that brightness away from him and just making him look a little bit more dramatic and less cartoonish, because he is the man of the moment. And I'm going to put a little bit of a brighter chartreuse green into this area just to give us a little bit of variation. I don't want everything to be the same intensity and the same flat colour. And again, this is more important than back here. So we might do a little bit of a suggestion of this one's dress here. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And the rose red of that one there, we'll just do a little bit. And this one's we'll just do that. I think that might be enough. So now I'm going to use peacock blue. So again, I'm not wanting to cover all of this texture from the gel crayons completely. And then what I'll do is I'll put a bit of green from around the lily pads there into the water as well. So the lily pads, I think we'll do those dark teal to start with around the outside. You can just see our poor postman is out in that weather. He's just pulled up across the road, and I do feel sorry for him out in that weather today. I might just do a little bit of colour around there. And then this dark teal I'm going to put into the water as well. Okay, that'll do for there for now. I'll leave that out. And then with this little fish, I'm going to do that orange. I always feel like I have to do fish like some sort of giant goldfish. And then a bit of very warm yellow. So that's chromium yellow deep. And this is cadmium orange deep. And then we'll do a little bit of that in the water too. And again, you know, they're not the centre of attention, so it doesn't need to be too fussy how I do that. And now I'm going to use a little bit of cloud blue. It's looking okay. And I think I'll just do a little bit of his trouser colour. We'll do the light umber. Being reflected into the water as well. And those little water drops, I'm going to do them blue when they're up here against his white shirt. And then I'm going to leave them lighter coloured in the water, I think. That seems to work. And I think on the bank here, I'm not going to actually bring green in around here. I'm going to use that as a bit of a cut-off point. I might do the flowers, but I'm going to leave all this white. And I want to use a little bit of cream. So I've got this, this is called Jazz Art pencil. It's a cheap set that I picked up. And I don't have a lot of colours, it was just a small set, but this cream is quite a handy colour. Just to take the whiteness off of things, but not really add too much colour, if you know what I mean. It's probably not even showing up on the camera. Okay. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to me, my battery had run low and I've lost a little bit of footage where I just strengthened up some colours around the edges. I put a little bit of cobalt violet into some of the shadowy areas, very, very minor amounts. And I lightened off some of the colour here with an eraser because I felt like that was a little bit too strong for what I wanted. So now what I'm going to do is use a water-based marker to do the border, but I'm quite happy with the way that's coming along. So I'm going to get onto that. Now I thought I'd use the Stabilo Pen 68 to do this, and I want a very soft blue for the flowers. I've decided that I'd like to bring in that little bit of blue for the flowers. And at this point in the proceedings, you know, it's best not to introduce too many new colours, but maybe just different shades of what are already there. Pardon me, but not actually any sort of new or unusual sort of colours at this late stage. So I'm just going to quickly do this, and then I'm really pretty much towards the end because I feel quite happy with the way things have gone. So obviously I've had to adjust a few things as I went along. I started off wanting to do the gel crayon and oil pastel combination, but obviously, you know, the details are much too small to be putting oil pastels onto this page. So I might have to think about that perhaps for another page if I want to give that a go. I'm quite enjoying with this book trying all the different mediums in it so that each page is just that little bit different or got something different about it. And I think I might make these little birds blue as well. So I was thinking about either the lilac or violet colour of her dress or the blue, but I think I quite like the blue given what's going on around the rest of the page. And I've still got to do snail. So for the intertwining vines, I think what I might look for is a pale, very pale green. Now these markers do have numbers on them, but they're quite difficult to read. And again, I just really want to give you an idea of what you could do rather than, you know, you should copy this verbatim. There are so many more channels that do colour alongs far better than I will be able to do. And I think that's great because, you know, within the colour tube community, we've got people who you know, favour or tend to specialise in certain things over others. Some people are very much process based, some are results driven, some like to give you every detail and step-by-step instructions, and they're really good at it. Whereas that's not really my strong point. Other people like to focus on the mediums rather than anything else. So I'll keep that out for now, and I'm thinking that I'd like to do maybe another lighter green. And I'm actually going to do the leaves with this one as well. So this is just going to be like a border. I did think about whether I could maybe make it look like it was a border of, you know, made out of gold or bronze or something, but this is what I've decided to go for. Oh, I forgot the bird's tail there. So I really like the colours in these Stabilo Pen 68. They're very nice, vibrant sort of ink that they've got in them. And this has been a nice page to sit in colour on such a miserable day. Nice and bright and colourful. It's nice to sit in colour something bright when it's dull outside. Now this is a very sort of dull yellow, sort of ochre, soft ochre type colour, which I'm going to do in the middle of the flowers, and we'll do the bird's beaks. Again, at this stage it's not about having all the details and making a feature of this border, because this isn't what's important, you know, this is what's important. So I'm just going to touch up a few areas where that's needed as well. I might put that on his hat there. And also do her shoes. And this one we might do a pink shoe. And this one I used grey for the bottom of her boots or shoes. Now for Snail, because he's in the distance, he doesn't really have to have a great deal of detail about him, but I'm just going to use a little bit of the marker, seeing as that's what I've got out here. And also, while I was off camera, I used an eraser. So I've got a little tiny battery eraser here. But I used an eraser, and that gel crayon that I had diluted with water, I was actually able to lift a bit of colour out to give that a bit of depth and shape to the bushes there. So nothing sort of untoward or unusual happening there, and I lifted a bit of colour back off of there. So the gel crayon does erase a little bit with the eraser as well, which is handy because I had some smudges and things around the place as well. So that little bird's tail, and their feet, I haven't done anything on there. Not that it's hugely noticeable, but we'll just do their little feet. And maybe just a little bit of something here where there might be a shadow. Just little bits. And Russell has put in quite a bit of, you know, hatching and shading and so on there to give you ideas of where you might put shadows. So many times the artists do give us some hints where we can put shadows and highlights by the way that they do their hatching and shading, line work and so on. So you can go to as much trouble for detail as you want, or keep it pretty simple and still get a reasonable, sorry, banging everything around here, a reasonable result, I think. So I might call that quits. So I'll just show you a little bit more closely some of those details in the water. Now you might be able to see that it's quite textural still there, where I've left some of the oil, gel crayon, sorry, not oil pastel, gel crayon, and then I've put some pencil over the top of it and so on. And then that is all just the gel highlighter crayon in the background, which I blended with the cotton bud. You might see there, that's where I erased some colour back off with the eraser. And I think that is probably as much as I need to do with the page. I'm happy with that result. And that one is called A Quick Dip. Set in Pemberley, 1813, Mr Fogherty takes a moment to refresh himself in an inviting pond after a long journey. So there you go. I've used Shuttleart Gel Crayons. I've used these gel highlighter crayons. I've used Arrtx pencils, a few Prismacolor, and the Stabilo Pen 68. And that's how it has finished up. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And next time we will be going to Russia, Tsarist Russia. Mr Fogherty experiences his first tragic love affair, but the princess does have a parting gift. So that will be next time, and that is this particular page. So thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Bye now.